Because why not add that fan fiction to Madam Web? More on that Monday. Anyway,
Indeed.
So you watch a lot of movies, maybe not as much as some, but you start to see patterns, you start to see similarities, you start to see a lot of stuff that's just, it's the same as everything else, especially if you have a mind like mine and you have a propensity for deconstruction and you can, you can um, identify the least common denominator in just about everything. It When something comes along, how good it is or how bad it is, if it's wildly different than anything I've seen before, or it's doing different things than I've seen before, or that I haven't seen in a while, it's going to get my attention. And Cuckoo got my attention for that reason. It's a weird take on the monster horror genre. Um, you're not wrong about how I did key into the sort of family dynamics, the treatment of this. I was actually somewhat sympathetic to the father. Like the father is just trying to keep his family together. He has his new
He
family
gets
that he's.
he gets he gets a real raw deal from this in this movie.
I was gonna say, like, well, yeah, he's definitely painted a certain way that I don't necessarily agree with, but from the father's standpoint of view, he has a very nice family here. He has a very good gig. He's trying to keep it together, and in comes his daughter, and he's just praying to God the daughter will get her shit together and go with the flow. And from his point of view, she is doing nothing but upsetting the apple cart and flipping things over and causing problems. And it was like, I don't need this. Like, I want to have a relationship with you, but I I don't need you tearing down what I'm trying to build here for no good reason that I can see. Um, and then and I was sympathetic with Gretchen. Gretchen didn't really want to be there, but she's trying to make the best of a bad situation, and then she gets attacked by a monster. you know,
That no one believes exists.
Right. No one believes exists. And then of course, because there's Dan Stevens who wants to keep this all under wraps and doesn't want her to find out, is gaslighting her. And she's like, what the fuck is happening? And this is kind of my favorite part of this movie. And it was something I was thinking about because, we do a lot of horror here and we talk about a lot of big budget horror. And, once upon a time, the Scream franchise was really good. And it was good because it was in and of itself deconstructing the slasher subgenre. And they did a lot of fun things with it. And it invented things of the time that we still do to this day that I am now starting to complain about, like the two murderers, overcompensating for being magic. That's that kind of thing, of which I said recently, stop doing that. It's overdone to death. But Scream did it in modern culture. Scream did it first, did it well, and everyone's copied it since, including themselves. But I was thinking about Scream because um, in the first, at least the first movie, I can't speak to the rest of them. The stabbings felt pretty brutal. They felt like they had weight to them. And that's a use of editing, sound editing, the way they were shot. Especially that first kill to set the tone with Drew Barrymore. You really feel her mutilation, and it it planted a flag in Scream saying we are here to do business. Um, and a lot of horror movies have come out since then, and they have succeeded or failed to a variety of degrees, varying degrees. Cuckoo does something, I think, with harming your final girl that I don't see in a lot of movies. The damage she takes feels weighty without it having to resort to stabbings, or direct attacks. In
Well,
one
yeah,
case she's
because
injured on falling off a bike. In another case she's injured in a car accident. And my favorite thing that happens to her is when the one cop knocks the series of shelves on top of her. And in another movie, she would have erupted out of it like fucking Wonder Woman. And here it really hits her, and like you feel the weight of it on her. Um, One thing I want to say before I let you cut in, because if I don't say this, I'll be mad at myself. It felt like, and this is what I mean by it's unlike a lot of other movies, which I don't think are conscious of it, but I think it's a really good thing that this movie did. She continues to take damage as her mental health unravels. So there's like a manifestation physically happening with her as her mental health deteriorates. And it's like slowly but surely, there's one bad thing happening to her. I mean, if you look at, like, I'm not completely off on this. If you look at the marketing for it, start with the bandage on her head.
Mm-hmm.
Like, clearly they are wanting the audience to key into the fact that as time progresses in the movie, as plot points are made, as the big evil plot unveils itself, worse and worse things are happening to her. By the end of this movie, she is like practically bandaged up like a mummy in her arms in the it's not a sling, it's in what do you call those things? That's it's like a bionic cast.
Yeah, it's a specific type of cast that limits. It's designed to adjust. You see them on people in their legs after they have like ACL surgery. This is just one for
Right.
the arm.
40 years ago, she'd have just been wrapped in just like regular casts. She'd been like limping around and she
Head to
practically
toe.
mummified.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Like, I think the movie does a really, really good job of reminding you that pain hurts and damage is limiting, and it gives you natural hurdles for your protagonist, for your final girl. So bravo there. I think the movie is shot interestingly. And I think Dan Stevens' evil plot is one of the weirder ones I've seen in movies. And I think that's why I like it so much.
Okay. I don't disagree with pretty much any of that. So let me go with a few of my problems to as by way of counterpoint. This movie wants to have an atmosphere that it does not achieve.
That is fair.
If you want to have the eerie, everything's a little bit off, like folk horror atmosphere, that takes work. You have to put time and effort into establishing that. This movie doesn't.
Oh God, what was the movie that everyone was like, film people, as everyone were they were finishing in their pants over, and it's the movie with Florence
I assume
Pugh.
you're referencing Midsummer.
That's the one. Midsummer accomplishes what you're talking about.
Midsummer or The Ritual, which is actually a really nice monster movie in addition to being some folk horror stuff. It's on Netflix still, I think. It's The Ritual or it's The Rite. I can't remember. Ritual. Rite is possession horror with Anthony Hopkins. The original Wicker Man. Sort of The Witch. Sort of with is folk horror. But yeah, like the point being, the setup for this really wants to establish that kind of vibe, that kind of atmosphere, and it just never puts in the work to establish the mood of everything that's going on enough to get that across. So there's a little bit of falling short with other stuff that should hit harder if that atmosphere had been properly established. There's a little bit too much intercutting of the thriller plot with the family drama, which is, I shouldn't say too much intercutting. It never blends well. A really good horror movie that relies on family drama as its emotional core blends those two things together a little bit better than this does. Something like Hereditary, where that's kind of all the emotional core of it, but it works really well. Or The Babadook, which is all about domestic horror in some respects.
Babadook's a really good example of how you blend family drama and horror effectively.
Yeah. So, and bear in mind, I'm aware these are you could argue these are gold standards I'm bringing up. Like, this is the standard of excellence. And fair enough, not everything's going to reach that, but that's what you should be aiming for. And this movie just falls a little bit too short of what it needed to really kind of be consistent. I mean, I mentioned there's like one decent scare in this thing. And even some of the other sequences where okay, maybe they're not scary, but shouldn't there be tension? There's a few of those even that fall just a little bit short.
Mm.
I actually wound up. You're right that the motivation and the plot for the villain being purely like um animal conservation, like that's what he's doing.
It's the plot. It's a part of the plot of like the Wayland Yutani Corporation,
Yeah.
but not done so stupid and so over the top and so mustache-twirly evil. There's a detached scientificness about it that
Mhm.
I kind of adored.
I I really like that. My only gripe with that becomes I actually needed a little bit more explanation here. And I don't need a lot more because some mystery is kind of important to all this. Like I don't need to sit through a biology class on these things.
No, but I think what this movie was missing that really push it over the top and get maybe you who are a little bit more reticent to go with it is the scene in every movie ever where you get to see the length and breadth of the horror.
Yeah.
You know, we need to see kind of an example of what his end game looks like.
I
And for
yeah.
Gretchen to have a reaction of anything but this.
I or we need to see we need a better view of what did he call them, a laying, where they actually
Hmm.
like throw a little body horror in here. Like
Yeah. I
let's
mean,
go a little bit with that. Or
what if a crazy person had cut the egg hatching and the face hugger jumping on Kane's face? You know,
okay,
like,
yeah.
and we just cut all of that out, and we cut right to the xenomorphs running around on the ship. What a
Yeah,
different movie Alien turns out to be.
very. And it doesn't work nearly as well.
Correct.
So the other thing I think I would have liked in that respect is kind of the why. Like again, he says, I'm a conservationist. I believe in preserving these creatures. I'm okay with that, but I do still want a little bit of a why. Like same kind of thing. Like there's a few different like species of animals that only exist under like in zoos. It's one of the reasons I don't think zoos are bad things. Like you can have a bad zoo, but a zoo itself is not bad. Like part of what we're doing here is preserving these creatures that in their natural habitat might not anymore. Like the either some kind of changing environment or whatever reason they're just not there.
Right. The most important movie of the 20th century was Star Trek 4. It teaches us to make sure that we have the animals so that in the future, when we need them, they'll be there.
I hate so much that you brought that up.
You're welcome.
That's one of my least favorite Star Trek. It's not my least favorite Star Trek movie, but
Well aware how much you hate Star Trek
I hate fun, Mark. You know this.
4.
I gained more appreciation for Star Trek 4 though when I realized how little of those are actually whales.
Okay. Back to the movie we're talking about.
Yeah, but I could have again a little bit more of the why. Like, okay, you believe in conserving these creatures. Okay, people want to save the polar bears. There's a non-trivial chance that the polar bear habitat shrinks so much we have to keep them in captivity, and that's the only place you find polar bears. Is this a worthwhile use of time and resources? Maybe. I'm not weighing in on that. But the why are we preserving the polar bears is like, well, because polar bears are cool and we feel guilt, or something like you can make arguments about the why. I'm fine with his motivation being the scientific preservation of this different species of being. The why he feels compelled to do this, I did kind of want an answer to,
And it could
and
have
we
just
don't have
been
it.
we want to study them. You know, who
Which
knows? Who knows what these creatures will bring us?
I would have been, and I would have been okay with that. They don't give us anything.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Like
Yeah,
a line that says
anything.
we preserve these creatures because we don't know them and we must. Okay, I agree
Or
with you now.
we think that this that this chemical we get out of one of their glands after they die is like it cures cancer. I don't know, something.
Yeah, I had a very similar thought, but I was trying to keep it really general.
Yeah, but again, anything
Mhm.
along those lines,
Right.
would be valuable under these circumstances, and we don't get it. And again, the ending to this to me is still just bizarre. That her impulse is to take this small child, get with this woman she met a day ago, and drive off into the sunset when their parents are still there.
Here, if I may, my only counter to that particular argument is, first of all, it's highly believable for me for a young woman to meet a girl in one day and want to run away with her. I live in this world. I've seen it.
I was fine with that the first time, like million% on board with her first attempt.
Well, this whole area is shit now. I mean, this is where the horror was. They want to get as far away from it as possible. So all that tracked for me. Taking Alma with her, I think that's one of my major issues with this movie, if I have any, is I don't buy Gretchen. Like I was reading through the plot synopsis of like I gotta fill in the gaps here. I don't know what I just saw, and I'm reading it, and she's like, and she just wants to save her sister. I'm like, it doesn't feel like she likes her sister through 99.9% of this movie. And the only thing I can come up with is she figures her parents were in on the plot, so they don't deserve the child, and she'll take the child away, and that'll be fine. I mean, it's dumb, and
which is really my big gripe with the
yeah,
way this movie ends. It's just kind of dumb. And for a finale that in general I think it's not perfect, but kind of works to end on that weird note, just again.
your parents suck. I'm going to take you with me because we must get away from the horror. And
Never mind.
again,
But there's no evidence that the parents suck.
yeah,
Is my big gripe. Like they're not abusive. They're not.
The filmmakers think they suck. That's the problem here. This is
Yeah.
kind of like what we said about Strange Darling. We're resting a little too heavily on the filmmaker's perspective.
Yeah. 100%.
If you've ever talked to somebody who like they're explaining something to you, and they're explaining something to you from the standpoint of view of they feel like they are 100% right and there is no counter, and they are just like, it's kind of like when I talk to my dad. My dad explains stuff from a place of like quasi-religious conviction, and he misses entire steps to bring me along the way to his point of view. And I always say to him, I'm like, if you would at least like calm the fuck down and walk me through every bit of how you got to be where you are right now, you might turn me, you might bring me along with you. And he goes, nope, I'm good with just being right, and you should agree with me. No, that's
This is a bad way to go through life.
He's gonna die soon. He's in his 70s.
Okay.
Doesn't matter.
Past a certain point, okay, you kind of just throw your hands
that's my
up and
point.
whatever,
But I'm bringing up my dad because the filmmakers are kind of like my dad in the sense of they didn't bring you along the way in an argument. Like if you want a different parallel than my stupid family life, think about lawyers. When lawyers are making oral arguments, they have to present evidence every step of the way in order for the jury to be able to reach a conclusion. If they miss something, the jury doesn't have that information. They can't make an informed decision. You might not win. And it's like, well, I had a winning argument here. I know I'm right. I have the evidence. But if you drop steps and you just presume to assume that your audience knows what the fuck you're talking about, and it's part of the reason. So, an even better one, more personal of this podcast. So, Robert and I have, this has been a learning experience, to say the least, in the 10 years we've been doing podcasts together. And if you go back and listen to some of the early stuff, we don't know what the fuck we're doing. We're just talking. And we're just talking to each other. We don't give a shit what you think. there is a lot of not acknowledging our audience at all.
did we even have an audience back then?
We did. They became our friends and have been on this podcast. Hi, Andrew. And Jesse, Jesus Christ, Jesse started out as a fan, and we couldn't get rid of him. Now he's one of the wise men.
And now we want more of Jesse, and we can't quite get the scheduling right.
So my point being, we used to not talk to our audience. We just talked to each other, and if you understood, it's great. If you didn't, who gives a fuck? Then a few years ago, when we switched to video, and we were starting to get an audience, and I would talk to people who watched our podcast, they would say, "You guys sound really smart. I don't know what you're talking about, though. I can't follow anything that you're saying." Sounds great, though. Like, it made me aware that I have to change my speaking style and the way that we do these in order to bring people along so they can follow it and they get a satisfying experience. As opposed to doing what we used to do, which is just talk and hoped you were with us, and if you didn't, go fuck yourselves. Who cares? Which is a great way to retain an audience. So, Cuckoo, the same thing, operates narratively from this place, or not narratively, operates thematically from this place of the filmmakers very much have a very specific perspective and very much see the characters a certain way and very much see what they're talking about in this film a certain way, and they're missing steps to get you to where they are.
Yeah.
And so
the perpetual assumption of facts, not in evidence.
Right. And so you as an audience member are kind of left going, huh? And they're just like, no, why aren't you with us? We we said something very meaningful and deep here. And it's like, well, you didn't walk me through the entire thing and you lost me.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's Cuckoo. It's another one that, if you're into this kind of thing, is not the world's worst use of your time, but it's another one that I recommend very sparingly.
I started to say it before. Now I can say it. This is one that I would go back and watch with my kids. There's nothing in it that they haven't seen before. For better or for worse. I think it's an interesting movie, and I want to show them interesting movies. I mean, I want to show them the classics too. Fuck, last weekend I showed them Three Amigos. But yes, but
please tell me they had a good time with that.
My daughter more so than my son.
That unfortunately tracks.
But
we may have poisoned the well a bit too much on Jonas to get him to enjoy.
I'm having to do some work to pull him back from the Robert Winfree brink.
Don't look too deep into the existential dread. It's not good for you. Back from the ledge.
Yep, easy. Actually, I very pointedly told him tonight. I was like, "You are some of the best and worst parts of me and your grandfather, and I'm trying to change that. Let's moderate that just a touch." So anyway, I think if you have an appetite for interesting films, there's worse than you can do than Cuckoo. And I do think partially because I do think it's a well-made movie despite the criticisms, but also because there's such an awful just such a shallow pool of good films this year that it's one of the better films of the year by default.